"Please spare my child," the desperate widow screamed, as iron chains bit into her wrists and soldiers tore her daughter from her arms. Then from the canyon shadows emerged a warrior painted in blood. A Comanche they called Black Wind, and everything changed. Fort Dawson, New Mexico Territory, spring 1874. The trading post squatted at the edge of civilization like a wounded animal. Half military outpost, half merchant hub, where the army's reach met the vast emptiness of Comanche land. Adobe walls baked under a merciless sun that bleached bones white and turned men's thoughts dark. Wagon wheels creaked over sun-cracked earth, leaving trails in dust fine as flour. The air smelled of horse sweat, tobacco smoke, gunpowder residue from morning drills, and the metallic tang of fear that seemed to seep from the very stones. Merchants hawked their wares from wooden stalls, while soldiers lounged in whatever shade they could find. Uniforms stained with sweat and desert grime, in the center of the dusty courtyard, beneath a wooden platform built for announcements and auctions, Lillian Quinn knelt in the dirt with her hands bound behind her back. The rope was thick and coarse, the kind used for tethering horses, and it had rubbed her wrists raw over the past 2 hours. Angry red welts circled her skin, some already weeping clear fluid that mixed with the dust coating her arms. Her dark blonde hair, once pinned neatly beneath a bonnet, now hung loose and tangled around her face. Strands stuck to her cheeks where tears and sweat had created muddy tracks through the dust. Her dress, a simple homespun cotton the color of faded sage, was torn at the shoulder where rough hands had grabbed her when she tried to run. Lily's daughter, 5-year-old Anna, stood 10 feet away in the grip of a thick-armed sergeant whose meaty hand clamped around the child's upper arm. The sergeant's name was Morrison, and though his face showed discomfort with his assigned task, his grip never loosened. Orders were orders. Anna wore a tiny calico dress that Lily had sewn by candlelight through the long winter months, each stitch placed with love. Blue flowers on a cream background, with tiny pearl buttons Lily had salvaged from her own wedding dress. Her brown hair was plaited into 2 braids, though they'd come loose during the struggle. Her brown eyes, wide with terror no 5-year-old should ever experience, locked onto her mother's face with desperate intensity. Tears rolled down her dirt-smudged cheeks in silent rivers. 6 months ago, Lily had owned a homestead 20 miles south of Fort Dawson. Nothing grand, just 40 acres of scrubland, with the timber house her husband Thomas had built with his own hands over 2 summers. He'd cut every log, fitted every joint, chinked every gap with mud and grass. The house had 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, windows with real glass, and a wood floor that Lily swept clean every morning. Outside stood a well that ran clean and cold, a chicken coop housing 8 laying hens, a small barn for their 3 milk cows, and a vegetable garden where Lily coaxed tomatoes, squash, and beans from soil that fought her every day. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Thomas Quinn had been a good man, steady and kind, with calloused hands that could gentle a spooked horse or cradle his daughter with equal skill. He had a gentle smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and a way of making Lily feel safe, even when the wind howled across the prairie. He worked as a freight hauler, moving supplies between Fort Dawson and smaller settlements scattered across the territory. Flour, nails, ammunition, tools, bolts of fabric, medicine, letters from back east. The work was hard and dangerous, with Comanche raids always a possibility, and the terrain itself claiming wagons and men with casual regularity. But Thomas was careful and skilled, and he always came home, until he didn't. The winter sickness came in December, sweeping through the territory like an invisible reaper. Some called it influenza. Others said pneumonia. The army doctor called it God's will and offered no treatment beyond rest and prayer. Thomas caught it on a freight run to Santa Rosa, came home shaking with fever, his skin burning hot, his eyes glazed and unfocused. Lily tried everything. She made broths from every herb she knew. She bathed him with cool water. She prayed until her knees were bruised from kneeling on the hard floor. Anna sang to her father, soft little songs she'd made up, thinking her voice might call him back. But 4 days after he stumbled through the door, Thomas Quinn died in their bed. His last words, a whispered apology that he was leaving them alone. Lily buried him behind the house under a cottonwood tree, its branches bare in the winter cold. She dug the grave herself, the frozen ground fighting her every shovelful, her hands blistering and then bleeding. Anna stood beside her throughout, silent and solemn, in a coat too thin for the cold, holding a handful of wildflowers that had somehow survived the first frost. Purple asters and late-blooming paintbrush clutched in a small fist. When the grave was filled and marked with stones Lily had carried from the creek bed, Anna placed the flowers on the mound and whispered, "Goodbye, Papa." Those were the only words spoken. The debts came next, arriving like carrion birds drawn to death. Thomas had borrowed from the First Territorial Bank to buy their land, standard practice for homesteaders. 15% interest, payments due quarterly, the land itself as collateral. While Thomas lived and worked, the payments were made on time. But with him dead and winter closing in, the income stopped. The debts did not. Lily tried everything. She sold the cows first, getting far less than they were worth from a buyer who knew desperation when he saw it. Then the chickens sold one by one as the feed ran out. She took in mending and washing, her fingers cracking and bleeding from the lye soap and rough fabric. She charged almost nothing because she couldn't afford to lose the work. She skipped meals so Anna could eat. She burned furniture for warmth when the firewood ran out, feeding Thomas's handmade chairs into the fireplace piece by piece. It was never enough. The bank wanted its money. The law said debts must be paid. The quarterly payment came due in March, and Lily had exactly $7 to her name. The payment was $63. She went to the bank in person, Anna in tow, and begged for an extension. Just 3 months. Just until spring when she could plant a crop. She knelt in the bank office, her pride stripped away by necessity, and pleaded with men in clean suits who looked at her like something unpleasant they'd scraped off their boots. The answer was no. When Lily couldn't produce the cash, the bank seized the property. Everything Thomas had built became property of the First Territorial Bank of New Mexico, owned by Silas Greer. The foreclosure was legal, proper, executed with all the cold efficiency of the law. 2 men arrived with a writ signed by a territorial judge. They gave Lily 1 hour to gather her personal belongings. She took clothing, a few cooking utensils, Thomas's Bible, a tintype photograph of their wedding day, and Anna's rag doll. Everything else stayed. Silas Greer owned the bank, along with half the commercial property in Fort Dawson, a cattle ranch to the east, and mining interests in the mountains. He was a man who'd never driven a nail, never plowed a field, never done an honest day's physical labor in his entire pampered life. He'd come west from Philadelphia with family money and a sharp mind for seeing opportunity where others saw hardship. He bought debts, collected on foreclosures, purchased land cheap and sold it dear. He wore fine suits ordered from San Francisco, smoked cigars shipped from Cuba, and ate meals prepared by a Chinese cook while families around him went hungry. He was not evil in the dramatic sense. He broke no laws. He simply pursued profit with single-minded focus. When Greer came to inventory the seized property, riding out in a fine carriage with leather seats and brass fittings, he found nothing of value. The house was modest. The land was poor, rocky soil barely suitable for grazing. The well was shallow. There was no profit to be had. He could sell the property, but at best he'd recoup 60% of the debt. The Quinn homestead was a financial loss, except for one thing, except for Anna. Greer studied the child with the calculating gaze of a man assessing livestock. 5 years old, healthy despite recent hardships, obedient from what he could observe. Young enough to be trained, old enough to be useful. The law allowed for indenture contracts, a practice where orphans and debtors' children were bound into service to work off family obligations. It was legal, recognized by territorial courts. Indenture, Greer had said, standing in Lily's stripped kitchen with a leather ledger under one arm. The child works off the debt. 7 years of service in my household. She'll be fed, clothed, housed. It's more than fair. She can learn domestic skills. Cleaning, cooking, mending, serving. By the time she's 12, she'll be quite accomplished. You should be grateful I'm offering this opportunity, rather than simply writing off the loss and having you both thrown into the street." His eyes, cold as winter stones, swept over Anna with the look of a man calculating return on investment. "It's legal, Mrs. Quinn. The territorial code is quite clear. You owe a debt you cannot pay. The child represents value. I'm entitled to claim that value." Lily had refused. The word came out as a scream, raw and primal. She'd grabbed Anna and run, stumbling out of the house into the scrubland, fleeing on foot because she had no horse, no wagon, nothing but her legs and her desperation. For 3 weeks they survived in the wilderness like animals. They slept in caves and under rock overhangs. They ate wild berries, cactus fruit, roots that Lily dug with her bare hands. They drank from streams, the water sometimes so alkaline it made them sick. Anna never complained, never cried, even when her stomach cramped with hunger and her feet bled from walking. She trusted her mother absolutely, believed Mama would fix everything, would keep her safe. That trust was a weight heavier than any chain. The soldiers found them at dawn on the 23rd day. Lily had collapsed beside a dried creek bed, too exhausted to take another step. Anna slept in her arms, both of them skeletal, their skin burned from the sun, their lips cracked and bleeding. Sergeant Morrison actually showed a flicker of pity before duty hardened his face. "Ma'am," he'd said quietly, "you got to come back. This ain't no way for a child to live. She'll die out here." He'd given them water from his canteen, wrapped them in blankets, lifted them onto his horse with surprising care. But he'd still brought them back. Because orders were orders, and the law was the law. Now Lily knelt in the Fort Dawson courtyard, while Silas Greer stood on the wooden platform above her. He wore a black suit despite the brutal heat, his considerable belly straining against a silver waistcoat. A gold watch chain glinted at his chest. His face was round and red, bloated with self-satisfaction. Behind him stood Major Thornton, the fort's commanding officer, a lean man with iron-grey hair and pale blue eyes that had seen too much violence to be shocked by one more cruelty. He stood with arms crossed, watching with detached interest. Greer's voice boomed across the courtyard, addressing the gathered crowd of soldiers, traders, and townfolk. "Let this be a lesson in the sanctity of contracts and the rule of law." This woman entered into a legal agreement. She defaulted. "The law entitles me to compensation. Since she possesses no property of value, her child will serve in indenture until the debt is satisfied. 7 years of honest labor. It's more than fair. I could have her arrested for theft, for attempting to abscond with property that legally belongs to me. Instead, I'm offering a path to redemption." Lily's voice cracked as she screamed, "She's 5 years old. She's a baby. She's not property. You can't do this. Please, I'm begging you, take me instead. Let me work. I'll work 20 years, 30. Just don't take my daughter. She's all I have. She's all that's left of her father. Please." The words tore from her chest, raw and desperate, echoing off the adobe walls. Tears poured down her face, cutting clean tracks through the dust. Greer smiled. It was a terrible smile, thin and cold, the smile of a man who enjoyed power over the powerless. "You? What use are you, Mrs. Quinn? A widow with no skills, no education, no value. The child, however, has potential. Youth can be shaped, molded. She'll have food, shelter, clothing, more than you can provide. Your begging only proves you understand nothing of economics. This is not cruelty. This is mercy." Anna finally found her voice. It came out as a wail, high and piercing. "Mama, Mama, don't let them take me. I want to stay with you. Please, Mama. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good." She twisted in Morrison's grip, small hands reaching desperately toward Lily. Morrison's expression flickered with discomfort, but his orders were clear. He held firm. Lily surged forward. She made it 3 feet before 2 soldiers grabbed her, forcing her back to her knees. The ropes bit deeper into her wrists, cutting through raw skin, drawing blood. She didn't feel the pain. All she felt was Anna slipping away, being pulled toward a wagon that would carry her to Greer's estate, to a life of servitude, to a stolen childhood. "Please!" Lily screamed again, her voice breaking into ragged sobs. "Please spare my child. Take everything else. Take my life. Just leave her with me. She's all I have. She's all I am. Don't take her." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few women looked away, faces troubled. One man removed his hat and studied the ground. A Mexican woman crossed herself and whispered a prayer. But no one moved to help. No one challenged Greer. This was the frontier. Life was hard. Justice was harsh. The law was the law. Sentiment was a luxury few could afford. Greer gestured impatiently. "Enough theater. Sergeant Morrison, place the child in the wagon. We're wasting daylight." Morrison nodded stiffly and began dragging Anna toward the wagon. The little girl's screams intensified, raw and animal, the sound of a child who understood something terrible was happening. Lily fought against the soldiers with desperate strength. She thrashed and kicked, ignoring the pain in her shoulders, ignoring the blood running down her wrists. "No, no, Anna. Anna, I love you. I'll find you. I promise I'll find you. Don't forget me. Don't forget Mama loves you." Her voice was hoarse, shredded, barely human. Then the crowd went silent. Not the uncomfortable silence of witnessing shame. A different silence. The silence of held breath and sudden fear, primal and instinctive. Lily's sobs caught. Anna's screams faltered. Even Greer paused, his expression shifting from smug satisfaction to uncertainty. Major Thornton's head turned sharply, his hand dropping to the pistol at his hip. Soldiers straightened, eyes scanning, bodies tensing. At the edge of the courtyard, where the trading post met the open desert, a figure had appeared. He sat motionless on a paint horse, its coat a striking pattern of black and white patches. The horse stood with absolute stillness, not a muscle twitching. And on its back sat a man who radiated danger like heat from a forge. He was Comanche. His skin was copper brown, weathered by sun and wind. His hair was long and black, hanging past his shoulders, decorated with eagle feathers and strips of red cloth. He wore buckskin leggings and a vest made from buffalo hide, decorated with intricate beadwork. At his hip hung a knife with a bone handle. Across his back a bow and quiver of arrows, but it was his face that drew every eye. From forehead to jaw, from cheekbone to cheekbone, his face was painted in streaks of crimson. Not bright red or vermilion. This was darker, deeper, the color of dried blood. The streaks ran down like war marks, transforming his features into something between man and spirit. Someone whispered the name. Black Wind. The whisper spread like ripples. "It's him! The Blood Rider Black Wind." Fear rippled through the gathering. Soldiers shifted nervously, hands moving toward weapons. Major Thornton's jaw tightened. Even Silas Greer took an involuntary step backward. Black Wind was not just a warrior. He was a legend whispered around campfires, a ghost story told to frighten soldiers. They said he could ride for 3 days without rest. They said he could track a man across solid rock. They said he'd killed 17 soldiers in a single raid, moving through their camp like smoke. They said his war paint was made from the blood of his enemies, mixed with clay from a sacred canyon. They said he'd sworn never to speak the white man's language, never to compromise. Some stories were exaggeration. Some were myth. But enough were true to make the name itself a weapon. Black Wind had earned his reputation in blood and fire. He did not negotiate. He did not compromise. He rode where he wished, took what he wanted, and disappeared into the vastness of Comancheria like a spirit. He sat perfectly still, dark eyes sweeping across the courtyard. They moved from the soldiers to Greer, from Greer to Lily, kneeling in the dirt, from Lily to Anna held captive. His expression revealed nothing. The blood paint made his face unreadable, a mask of judgment. No one moved. No one spoke. The entire fort held its breath, waiting to see what the Blood Rider would do. Major Thornton's hand rested on his sidearm, but didn't draw. He'd seen what happened to men who underestimated Comanche warriors. The soldiers formed a defensive line, rifles ready but not raised. This was a moment balanced on a knife's edge. Anna stared at the painted warrior with wide eyes, her tears momentarily forgotten. Lily lifted her head, hope and terror warring in her chest. And Silas Greer, pompous and cruel just moments before, now looked like a man who'd suddenly realized law and civilization were thin veneers. Black Wind's horse took one step forward. Just one. The sound of its hoof striking earth was loud as a gunshot in the silence. Then another step, and another. Slowly, deliberately, the Comanche warrior rode into the courtyard, into the heart of Fort Dawson, surrounded by armed soldiers. He rode as if he owned the ground beneath him, as if the fort and everyone in it were merely temporary visitors in his world. And in that moment, with the sun beating down and fear thick in the air, the desperate widow Lillian Quinn and the blood rider Comanche called Black Wind locked eyes across the dusty courtyard. Neither spoke, neither moved, but something passed between them, a recognition, a connection that transcended language and culture. She was broken, drowning in despair. He was legend, painted in blood, feared by all. And their fates, for reasons neither could yet comprehend, had just become forever intertwined. Black Wind guided his paint horse forward with pressure from his knees alone, his hands resting loosely on the reins. Each step was measured, deliberate, calculated to show neither aggression nor retreat. The courtyard remained frozen, every person locked in place by the tension that crackled through the air like summer lightning. Dust swirled around the horse's hooves, catching the harsh sunlight and creating small devils that danced and died in the stillness. Major Thornton stepped forward from the platform, his hand still hovering near his sidearm. His voice carried the practiced authority of a man who'd commanded soldiers through battles and skirmishes across hostile territory. "That's far enough, Comanche. State your business or turn around. This is United States Army property, and you're not welcome here unless you've come to trade." His words were firm, but those who knew him well could detect the thread of caution woven through them. Thornton was no fool. He recognized the warrior before him, recognized the reputation, and knew that one wrong move could transform this tense standoff into a bloodbath. Black Wind stopped his horse 15 feet from where Lily knelt in the dirt. He sat perfectly still for a long moment, his dark eyes moving from face to face, reading the fear, the hostility, the curiosity. Then, with fluid grace that belied his powerful build, he swung down from his horse. His moccasined feet touched the ground without sound. He stood just over 6 feet tall, lean muscle, wrapped over a frame built for endurance rather than bulk. The crimson paint on his face seemed darker now, almost black in the shifting shadows, making his features appear carved from ancient stone. Silas Greer had regained some of his composure, though his face remained pale beneath its usual ruddy color. Money and property were his weapons, law and contracts his shields, and he wrapped himself in them now like armor. "Major Thornton, I must protest this interruption. I have legal business to conclude here. This savage has no standing, no right to interfere in matters of civilized commerce and law. I demand you remove him immediately." His voice carried less conviction than his words suggested, and his eyes never left the painted warrior who stood with such unnerving stillness. Black Wind reached to his side and drew his knife. The movement was smooth, unhurried, and it sent a ripple of tension through the soldiers. Rifles shifted, safeties clicked, men prepared for violence, but the Comanche warrior simply turned the blade in his hand, holding it flat across his palms in the universal gesture of offering, not threat. Then he pointed the knife toward Anna, still held in Sergeant Morrison's uncomfortable grip, and then toward Lily, kneeling in the dust. Major Thornton's eyes narrowed. "You want the woman and child?" It was a question born of experience with the Comanche, with their occasional raids to recover captives or take new ones, with the complex web of trading and negotiation that sometimes occurred even in the midst of war. Black Wind gave a single sharp nod. No words, just acknowledgement. Greer sputtered, his face flushing crimson to match the paint on the warrior's face. "Absolutely not. The child is mine by legal right. The debt is owed. The contract is binding. You cannot simply hand over property to this savage based on nothing more than his barbaric gestures. I will not stand for this outrage. Major Thornton, I will report this to the territorial governor himself if you allow this mockery of justice to proceed." His voice rose to a shrill pitch, desperation and outrage mixing with genuine fear. Blackwind sheathed his knife and walked to his horse. From a leather pouch secured to the saddle, he withdrew something wrapped in soft deerskin. He carried it back to where Greer stood on the platform, his movements casual, as if he were merely a trader at the market rather than a feared warrior surrounded by armed soldiers. With deliberate slowness, he unwrapped the deerskin to reveal its contents. Gasps echoed through the courtyard. Silver, Spanish silver coins, dozens of them gleaming in the sunlight. Old pieces of 8 reales, pesos from another era when Spain ruled these lands. Mixed among the silver were gold nuggets, raw and unrefined, the kind pulled directly from mountain streams by patient hands. There were also trade items of considerable value. A pristine beaver pelt, winter thick and worth a fortune in any trading post. A necklace of bear claws, each one perfect and polished. And something that made even the hardened soldiers murmur in appreciation, a cavalry officer's sword, the blade etched with decorations, the hilt wrapped in gold wire. Where Blackwind had acquired such a weapon was a story no one present wanted to contemplate. The Comanche warrior laid the deerskin and its contents at Greer's feet, then stepped back and crossed his arms. The message was clear. This was payment. This was the price he offered for the woman and child. The value spread before them was considerable, likely worth 3 or 4 times the debt Lily owed. It was a fortune by frontier standards. Greer stared at the wealth, his expression cycling rapidly through greed, calculation, fear, and indignation. His hands trembled slightly as he knelt to examine the contents more closely. He picked up a silver coin, tested it between his teeth in the time-honored way, held a gold nugget up to the light. His merchant's mind was at war with his pride, his desire for profit battling against his outrage at being challenged. The courtyard waited in breathless silence for his decision. Lily watched from her position in the dirt, hardly daring to breathe. She didn't understand what was happening, couldn't comprehend why this painted warrior had appeared like a spirit from the desert to offer payment for her and Anna. She knew of the Comanche, of course. Everyone on the frontier knew of them. They were the lords of the southern plains, fierce warriors who had resisted Mexican and American encroachment for generations. Stories of Comanche raids, of their horsemanship, of their ferocity in battle, were common currency in every settlement and fort. But she'd never been this close to one before, had never seen the reality behind the legend. Anna had stopped crying. The child stared at Blackwind with an expression that mixed fear and fascination in equal measure. There was something in his stillness, in his calm presence, that seemed to quiet her terror. Or perhaps it was simply that anything was better than being dragged away to Silas Greer's estate, to years of servitude under a cruel master. Major Thornton broke the silence, his voice pragmatic and weary. "Mr. Greer, that's easily 4 times the value of the debt owed. Take it and be done with this business. The alternative is this warrior taking what he wants by force, and I guarantee you that will end badly for everyone present. I've got 30 soldiers here, and maybe we could bring him down, but not before half my men are dead or wounded. Is your pride worth that much blood?" His tone made it clear what answer he expected. Greer's face worked through several emotions before settling into sullen acceptance. He was a businessman above all else, and the profit before him was undeniable. He could claim moral outrage, could insist on his legal rights, but at the end of the day, gold and silver spent just as well regardless of who provided them. And the Major's veiled threat was not lost on him. If violence erupted, Greer himself might not survive it. His fingers closed around a handful of coins. "Very well," Greer said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "The debt is satisfied. The woman and child are released from indenture. But let the record show that I act under duress, coerced by the threat of savage violence. Forced to accept terms I would never agree to under normal circumstances of civilized negotiation. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." He gathered the deerskin bundle with jerky, angry movements, clutching it to his chest like a miser with his hoard. Blackwind gave another sharp nod, then turned his back on Greer with deliberate dismissal. The insult was intentional and clear. He walked toward Sergeant Morrison, who still held Anna. The sergeant looked to Major Thornton, who gave a resigned nod. Morrison released his grip on the child's arm and stepped back, his relief at being done with the distasteful duty evident in his expression. Anna stood frozen for a moment, uncertain, then ran to her mother. Lily, still bound, could only weep as her daughter crashed into her, small arms wrapping around her neck. "Mama, mama, mama," Anna sobbed, the word repeated like a prayer, like a lifeline thrown to a drowning soul. Blackwind knelt beside them. Up close, Lily could see details invisible from a distance. The paint on his face was indeed mixed with something that gave it that dark, blood-like quality. His eyes were not pure black as they'd appeared from afar, but a deep brown, flecked with amber. There were scars on his arms and chest, pale lines against copper skin, the marks of battles and hunts and a life lived hard. His hands, when they reached for the rope binding her wrists, were strong but careful. He cut through the bonds with a single stroke of his knife, the blade so sharp she barely felt it part the rope. The moment her hands were free, Lily pulled Anna tight against her chest, cradling her daughter's head, whispering nonsense words of comfort and love. Her wrists throbbed where the rope had cut deep, blood trickling down her palms, but she didn't care. Anna was safe. Anna was here. That was all that mattered. Tears streamed down her face, washing clean tracks through the dirt and dust. Blackwind stood and gestured toward his horse. The meaning was clear. "Come." Lily looked up at him, her mind reeling with questions she couldn't voice. Where would he take them? What did he want in return for this rescue? The Comanche were known to take captives, to adopt them into their tribes, or trade them later. Was she simply trading one form of bondage for another? But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no cruelty there, no malice. Only a calm certainty, as if he knew exactly what he was doing and why. She struggled to her feet, her legs weak from kneeling, her body trembling with exhaustion and emotion. Anna clung to her hand with desperate strength. Together they walked toward the paint horse, every eye in the courtyard following their movement. Lily felt exposed, vulnerable, caught between the world she knew, harsh and cruel as it had proven to be, and the unknown that waited beyond the fort's walls. Blackwind lifted Anna onto the horse first, settling her in front of the saddle where she could hold the horse's mane. Then he turned to Lily and offered his hand. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. His grip was firm, calloused, steady. He lifted her up behind Anna with easy strength, then swung up behind them both. The horse, well-trained and accustomed to carrying multiple riders, didn't shift or protest. From the platform, Major Thornton called out, his voice carrying a warning. "Comanche, if any harm comes to that woman or child, if they're found hurt or killed, there will be hell to pay. Every patrol, every soldier, every scout will be hunting you. Do you understand?" Blackwind turned his head slightly, meeting the Major's eyes. For a long moment they stared at each other, two warriors from different worlds, each trying to measure the other's intent. Then Blackwind touched two fingers to his forehead, in a gesture that might have been acknowledgement or might have been mockery. It was impossible to tell. Silas Greer had retreated to the far side of the platform, clutching his bundle of silver and gold, his face twisted with impotent rage. "This is not over," he shouted. "I'll report this to the territorial authorities. I'll see you hanged, Thornton, for allowing this mockery. Justice will be done." But his words fell on deaf ears. Everyone present knew that Greer had gotten far more than the debt was worth, that he'd been enriched by this transaction despite his protests. His outrage was pure theater, performed for an audience that had already stopped watching. Blackwind touched his heels to the horse's flanks, and the animal moved forward. Not rushing, not fleeing, but walking with the same measured deliberation with which the warrior had entered the fort. They passed through the gathered crowd, which parted silently before them. Soldiers watched with expressions ranging from relief to concern to curiosity. The Mexican woman who had crossed herself earlier did so again, her lips moving in silent prayer. A grizzled trader with a face like old leather nodded slightly, a gesture of respect for something he'd witnessed that defied easy explanation. Lily held Anna tight with one arm and gripped the back of the saddle with her free hand. She could feel the warmth of the warrior's body behind her, solid and real, could smell the scent of leather and sage and smoke that clung to him. Her mind raced with fear and confusion, but underneath it all ran a thin thread of something else. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the desperate relief of a drowning person who'd been thrown a rope, however uncertain the hand that held it. They passed through the fort's open gates and into the vast emptiness beyond. The desert stretched before them, endless and unforgiving, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The sun blazed overhead, turning the world into shades of gold and brown and red. In the distance, mountains rose like broken teeth against the horizon. Somewhere out there was Comanche, the vast territory the Comanche still claimed as their own, despite the encroachment of settlers and soldiers. Anna twisted in the saddle to look up at the warrior who held the reins. "Are you going to hurt us?" she asked, her child's voice direct and fearless in the way only children can be. Blackwind looked down at her, his painted face unreadable. Then slowly he shook his head. A small gesture, but it carried weight. Anna seemed to accept this, turning back to face forward, her small hands still tangled in the horse's mane. Lily wanted to ask 1,000 questions. She wanted to know why this warrior had paid a fortune for two strangers. She wanted to know where they were going. She wanted to know what he expected from them, what price would eventually be demanded for this rescue. But when she opened her mouth to speak, no words came. Exhaustion, shock, and the overwhelming events of the day had stripped her of the ability to form coherent thoughts. So she simply held her daughter and let herself be carried away from Fort Dawson, away from Silas Greer and his cruelty, away from everything she'd known. Behind them, the fort grew smaller, becoming a collection of adobe blocks against the pale earth, then a smudge, then nothing at all. The desert swallowed them whole, 3 figures on a paint horse, moving steadily westward toward the setting sun. And in that moment, as they rode into the unknown, Lillian Quinn realized that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to comprehend. The desperate widow, who'd knelt in the dirt begging for her child's life, was gone. What she would become in the days ahead, she had no idea. But she was free, and Anna was safe. For now, that was enough. The paint horse carried them across terrain that shifted from hard-packed earth to loose sand to rocky ground, where ancient stone formations rose like monuments to forgotten gods. Blackwind guided the animal with such subtle movements that Lily could barely detect them. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, following landmarks invisible to her untrained eyes. A distant mesa, a particular arrangement of rocks, the curve of a dry wash. This was his land, his territory, and he moved through it with the confidence of a man who knew every canyon and water source for 100 miles. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the rhythmic sound of hooves, the creak of leather, and the whisper of wind across the desert. The sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. Anna had fallen asleep, lulled by the rocking motion of the horse, her small body slack against her mother. Lily's arms ached from holding her daughter, but she wouldn't have loosened her grip for anything. As twilight gathered, Blackwind guided the horse toward a rock formation that jutted from the desert floor like a broken fist. As they drew closer, Lily saw that the rocks formed a natural shelter, a shallow cave with an overhang that would provide protection from the elements. A thin trickle of water seeped from a crack in the stone, feeding a small pool before disappearing into the sand. This was clearly a place the warrior knew well, perhaps a regular stopping point on whatever route he traveled. He dismounted first, then lifted Anna down with gentle hands. The child woke briefly, murmured something incoherent, then settled back into sleep. Blackwind laid her carefully on a flat section of sandy ground, positioning her where the rock would shelter her from any wind. Then he turned and offered his hand to Lily. She slid from the horse, her legs nearly buckling when her feet hit the ground. She'd been in the saddle for hours, her body already battered and exhausted before the ride began. Black Wind steadied her with a hand on her elbow until she found her balance. Without a word, he began to make camp. He hobbled the horse so it could graze on the sparse desert grass that grew near the water. He gathered dried brush and dead wood from where it had collected against the rocks. He built a small fire with practiced efficiency, using a bow drill to create the initial spark. The firelight pushed back the gathering darkness, creating a circle of warmth and light in the vast emptiness. Lily sank down beside Anna, every muscle in her body screaming with fatigue. She watched the warrior work, trying to understand this man who'd appeared like something from a fever dream to rescue them. He moved with economy and purpose, no wasted motion, no hesitation. When the fire was established, he produced a leather bag from his horse's packs and withdrew strips of dried meat, some kind of pemmican made from buffalo, berries and fat. He handed several strips to Lily without ceremony. She was so hungry that pride or caution never entered her mind. She bit into the pemmican, finding it tough but nourishing, with a slightly sweet taste from the berries. She woke Anna gently and got the child to eat a small amount before sleep claimed her again. All the while, Black Wind sat on the opposite side of the fire, his painted face even more striking in the flickering light, his eyes reflecting the flames like a wolf's. Finally, Lily found her voice. "Thank you." The words seemed inadequate for what he'd done, but they were all she had. "I don't understand why you helped us, but thank you." Black Wind looked at her across the fire. For a long moment he said nothing, and Lily wondered if he even understood English, if her words were just meaningless sounds to him. Then he spoke, and his voice was deep and rough, as if from long disuse. "You needed help." 3 words in perfectly clear English, with only the slightest accent. 3 words that raised 100 new questions. Dawn broke across the desert in waves of pink and gold, the sun climbing over distant mountains and flooding the landscape with harsh, beautiful light. Lily woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory crashed back. The fort, Greer, the painted warrior. She sat up quickly, her body protesting every movement with sharp aches and stiffness. Anna slept beside her, curled into a small ball, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. Black Wind was already awake, tending to his horse near the water source. The crimson paint had been washed from his face, revealing features that were strong and angular, with high cheekbones and a straight nose. Without the war paint, he looked younger than Lily had expected, perhaps 30 summers at most. His hair was unbound, falling past his shoulders in a thick black curtain that caught the morning light. He wore the same buckskin clothing from yesterday, but somehow he appeared less threatening, more human in the gentle dawn. He looked up as she stirred, his dark eyes meeting hers across the small camp. There was no hostility in his gaze, but no warmth either. Just a calm assessment, as if he were measuring her strength, her resilience, her ability to endure what lay ahead. He gestured toward the fire, where a small clay pot sat at the edge of the embers. Steam rose from it in delicate wisps. Lily crawled over and found that he'd made some kind of tea from desert plants, the liquid dark and aromatic. She sipped it cautiously, finding it bitter but not unpleasant, with an earthy taste that seemed to settle her nervous stomach. Black Wind packed his belongings with the same efficient movements she'd observed the night before. Every item had its place, every motion served a purpose. He rolled the deerskin that had held his payment to Greer, now empty, and secured it to his saddle. He checked the horse's hooves, running his hands down each leg with practiced care. He refilled his water skin from the small pool, then offered it to Lily. She drank gratefully, the water cool and slightly mineral in taste. Anna woke as the sun cleared the horizon, blinking in the bright light. She sat up and looked around, her expression confused, until she saw her mother. Then her face crumpled and tears threatened, the reality of their situation crashing down on her young mind. "Mama, where are we? I want to go home." Her voice was small and frightened, and it broke Lily's heart. Lily pulled her daughter close, stroking her tangled hair. "We don't have a home anymore, sweetheart, but we're safe." This man saved us from Mr. Greer. He's helping us." Even as she spoke the words, Lily wondered if they were true. She still didn't know what Black Wind wanted, what his intentions were, where he was taking them. But the alternative, Anna bound in servitude to Silas Greer, was unthinkable. Whatever lay ahead had to be better than that. Black Wind approached and crouched down to Anna's level. From a pouch at his belt, he withdrew something and held it out to the child. It was a small, carved figure, no bigger than her thumb, made from a piece of bone or antler. The carving depicted a horse in mid-gallop, its mane and tail flowing, every detail rendered with surprising delicacy. Anna's eyes widened. She looked from the carving to the warrior's face, uncertain. He pressed it into her small palm and closed her fingers around it. "For courage," he said, his deep voice gentle. Then he stood and returned to his horse. Anna stared at the tiny carved horse, turning it over in her hands, examining every curve and line. Some of the fear left her face, replaced by wonder. Children were resilient, Lily thought. They adapted to new circumstances faster than adults, found hope in small kindnesses. They ate a simple breakfast of more pemmican and some kind of dried fruit that Black Wind produced from his supplies. The food was basic but sustaining, fuel for the body if not pleasure for the palate. Then the warrior doused the fire, scattering the ashes and covering the evidence of their camp with sand and stone. Within minutes, no trace remained that anyone had sheltered here. It was as if they'd never existed. Black Wind lifted Anna onto the horse first, then helped Lily mount. She'd spent her whole life on the frontier, had ridden horses since childhood, but she'd never ridden this way, with no saddle, just a blanket between her and the animal's back. It required different balance, different awareness. The warrior swung up behind them, and once again they were three people on one horse, moving across the endless desert. They rode west and slightly north, following terrain that grew increasingly rugged as the morning progressed. The flat desert gave way to broken country, where canyons cut deep gashes in the earth and mesas rose like ancient fortresses. Black Wind navigated the landscape with absolute certainty, choosing paths that Lily would never have seen, finding routes through seemingly impassable rock formations. Twice they stopped to rest the horse, letting the animal drink from hidden springs that appeared like miracles in the barren land. During one of these stops, while Anna played with her carved horse near the water, Lily gathered the courage to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. "Where are you taking us?" Black Wind was checking the horse's hooves again, running his fingers along the hard edges, feeling for cracks or damage. He didn't look up when he answered, "My camp. 3 days' ride from here." His voice was matter-of-fact, offering no additional explanation. "And then what?" Lily pressed. "What do you want from us?" This time he did look up, his dark eyes searching her face. "Nothing." The single word hung in the air between them. Lily shook her head, confused. "I don't understand. You paid a fortune for us. You must want something in return. Labor? Service? I'm not stupid. I know how the world works. Nobody does something for nothing." Black Wind stood, his full height imposing even though his manner remained calm. "The white man's world, maybe? Not my world. I saw injustice. I had the means to stop it. That is all." He turned his attention back to the horse, dismissing the conversation. But Lily wasn't satisfied. "Why us? There's injustice everywhere on the frontier. Why did you choose to help us?" He was silent for so long that Lily thought he wouldn't answer. Then, still not looking at her, he spoke. "I had a sister once, younger than me by 7 winters. When I was 20 summers, the Bluecoats raided our village while the warriors were hunting. They killed the old ones who couldn't run. They took the women and children who survived. My sister was among them. I searched for 2 years. I found her in a mission school in San Antonio. They had cut her hair, dressed her in white woman's clothes, given her a Christian name. They said they were civilizing her, saving her soul." His voice remained level, but Lily could hear the pain beneath the words like bedrock under sand. "She didn't recognize me at first. They had beaten the Comanche out of her, beaten her language, her customs, her memory of who she was. When I tried to take her home, she screamed. She called me savage. She was afraid of me, her own brother. The priests said she was better off with them, that I was a heathen who would corrupt her immortal soul. I could have killed them all, taken her by force, but she didn't want to come. She had been broken, remade into something else. I lost her not to death but to the white man's idea of salvation. He finally looked at Lily, and she saw grief in his eyes, old and deep and never fully healed. When I saw that man trying to take your daughter, to bind her into service, to steal her childhood for the sake of debt and law, I saw my sister. I had the power to stop it this time. So I did, that is all. No other reason. No debt owed. No service required. He mounted his horse in one smooth motion, ending the conversation. Lily stood frozen, his words echoing in her mind. She'd spent her entire life thinking of the Comanche as savages, as the enemy, as something less than human. The stories she'd heard painted them as bloodthirsty raiders, kidnappers, killers. But this man had just revealed a depth of pain and humanity that shattered those simple categories. He'd lost his sister to the same kind of cruelty that had nearly claimed Anna. He'd acted not from any expectation of gain, but from a place of profound empathy born of his own suffering. She lifted Anna onto the horse, then mounted herself, settling behind her daughter. As Black Wind urged the animal forward, Lily found herself looking at him differently, not as a savage or a threat, but as a man who'd been wounded by the same forces that had nearly destroyed her. They were both victims of a harsh world that valued property over people, law over mercy, civilization over compassion. In that shared understanding, a fragile bridge began to form. The landscape continued to change as they traveled. They entered a region of red rock formations that rose from the earth in fantastic shapes, carved by wind and water over countless centuries. Pillars and arches, spires and balanced rocks that seemed to defy gravity. The beauty was stark and unforgiving, but it took Lily's breath away. She'd lived on the frontier her whole life, but always in settled areas near forts and towns. She'd never ventured deep into the wild heart of the territory, had never seen the raw magnificence of the land the Comanche called home. Anna was entranced. She pointed at every new formation, asking questions that Black Wind answered with surprising patience. "What's that one called?" she'd ask, pointing at a tower of red stone. "Standing Guardian," he'd reply. "And that one?" "Sleeping Bear." Some of the names were English, translated for her benefit. Others he spoke in Comanche, the unfamiliar syllables rolling off his tongue in a language that sounded like wind and water, like the land itself given voice. On the second day, they encountered other travelers. Black Wind spotted them first, his eyes trained to detect movement at vast distances. He changed course slightly, heading toward a small band of Comanche moving across the desert with pack horses loaded with goods. As they drew closer, Lily's heart hammered with fear. She'd heard stories of Comanche war parties, of their ferocity in battle. But these were not warriors. They were families. Women, children, old men, traveling together with their possessions. The groups met in a wide canyon where a seasonal stream still held water from spring rains. The Comanche greeted Black Wind with obvious respect, calling him by a name Lily couldn't understand. The women looked at her and Anna with open curiosity, but no hostility. One old woman approached and spoke to Black Wind in rapid Comanche. He responded, gesturing toward Lily and Anna. The old woman nodded, then stepped closer to examine them with sharp, intelligent eyes. She reached out and lifted Lily's hands, examining the rope burns on her wrists with gentle fingers. She made a clicking sound with her tongue, disapproving, then called out to one of the younger women. The young woman brought a small clay pot filled with some kind of salve. The old woman applied it to Lily's wounds with surprising tenderness, speaking soft words in her own language. The salve was cool and soothing, taking the sting from the raw flesh. Another woman approached Anna, smiling, and offered the child a piece of honeycomb wrapped in leaves. Anna looked to her mother for permission. Lily nodded, and Anna accepted the gift shyly, tasting the sweet honey with wonder. The woman laughed, a warm sound, and touched Anna's hair gently before returning to her own family. Black Wind spoke with the men for some time, an exchange Lily couldn't follow. But she understood from their gestures that they were sharing information. News of the territory, locations of water sources, reports of army movements. The practical knowledge that kept people alive in this harsh land. Before the groups parted, the old woman who'd tended Lily's wounds pressed a small bundle into her hands. Inside was more of the healing salve, along with strips of soft leather and a bone needle with sinew thread. As they rode away, Anna asked, "Mama, why were they so nice to us? I thought the Comanche was supposed to be scary." Lily struggled for an answer. "People are more complicated than the stories we tell about them, sweetheart. Sometimes the people we're told to fear are just people trying to live their lives. Same as us." It was an inadequate explanation, but it was the best she could offer. That night, they camped in the shelter of a canyon wall where ancient hands had painted images on the rock. Deer and buffalo, warriors and hunters, symbols whose meanings were lost to time. Black Wind built another small fire and prepared a meal of rabbit he'd shot earlier with his bow. The meat was lean and gamey, but it was fresh protein, and Lily's body craved it. Anna ate with better appetite than she'd shown in months. After the meal, as the stars emerged in the darkening sky, Black Wind spoke without prompting. "Tomorrow we reach my camp. My people will be curious about you. Some may be suspicious. The Comanche have learned to distrust whites for good reason, but you are under my protection. No one will harm you. You will have shelter, food, safety. You may stay as long as you wish. When you choose to leave, I will guide you to a settlement, supply you with enough to start again. This is my promise." Lily studied his face across the firelight, seeing sincerity in his expression. "Why would you do all this for strangers?" He was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. "Because the world is hard enough without us adding to each other's suffering. Because I have the power to offer help and you need it. Because your daughter should not pay for debts she did not create, should not be punished for circumstances beyond her control. Is that not reason enough?" It was a philosophy so different from everything Lily had experienced in the white man's world, where every transaction had a price, every kindness demanded repayment, where the law cared more for property than people. She found herself moved by his simple humanity, by the clear moral code that guided his actions. "Thank you," she said, and this time the words felt less inadequate. "For everything, for saving us, for your kindness, for seeing us as human beings worth saving." Black Wind nodded, accepting her gratitude without false modesty. Then he spoke again, his tone more serious. "You should know something. My people are being pushed back, confined, forced onto reservations. The army grows stronger every year. More settlers come, more towns are built. The old ways are dying. The buffalo herds that sustained us for generations are being slaughtered by white hunters, who take only the hides and leave the meat to rot. My people are being starved into submission. The world you will see in my camp is not what it once was. It is a world in transition, perhaps in its final days." There was sorrow in his words, the grief of a man watching his entire way of life crumble. Lily didn't know what to say to such pain. What comfort could she offer for the death of a culture, the end of a people's freedom? She remained silent, and after a moment Black Wind stood and walked to the edge of the firelight, staring out into the darkness. He stood there for a long time, a solitary figure silhouetted against the stars, carrying the weight of his people's history on his shoulders. Anna had fallen asleep again, exhausted by the day's travel. Lily covered her with a blanket Black Wind had provided, tucking it around her small form. Then she too lay down, using her arm as a pillow, staring up at the vast sweep of stars overhead. They were so bright out here, far from any town or settlement, uncountable diamonds scattered across black velvet. She found herself thinking about the path that had led her to this moment. Thomas's death, the debt, Greer's cruelty, the desperate flight and inevitable capture. And then, this painted warrior appearing like something from a vision, offering salvation when she'd thought none existed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. Life was strange and unpredictable, full of turns no one could anticipate. A week ago, she'd been a widow facing the loss of her daughter to legal servitude. Now she was traveling across Comanche with a warrior whose kindness defied everything she'd been taught to believe about his people. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, what she'd find in Blackwind's camp, what the future held. But for the first time in months, she felt something other than despair. Not quite hope, not yet, but possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. On the third day of travel, the landscape changed again. They descended from the high desert into a region where grass grew thick and green, nourished by a river that cut through the land like a silver ribbon. Cottonwood trees lined the banks, their leaves whispering in the breeze. And there, spread along the river valley, was Blackwind's camp. Not a single cluster of teepees, but several family groups scattered across the good ground, each with their own fires and horse herds. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played near the water. Women worked on hides and gathered plants. Men tended to horses or worked on weapons and tools. It was a living community, a functioning society. As they approached, people began to notice them. Activity slowed. Faces turned in their direction. Lily felt the weight of dozens of eyes, measuring, assessing, wondering. Blackwind rode straight through the camp toward a particular tipi, set slightly apart from the others. It was larger than most, decorated with painted symbols that Lily didn't understand. He dismounted and helped Lily and Anna down, then called out in Comanche. An older man emerged from the teepee, his hair gray and worn in 2 long braids. His face was deeply lined, carved by years and weather and experience. But his eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. He looked at Blackwind, then at Lily and Anna, then back to Blackwind. A conversation followed in rapid Comanche, too fast for Lily to catch, even if she'd understood the language. The old man's expression cycled through surprise, skepticism, and finally something that might have been acceptance. Blackwind turned to Lily. "This is Many Horses, headman of this band, keeper of wisdom. I have told him your story. He says you may stay. He will provide a lodge for you, and the women will teach you what you need to know to survive here. You are now under the protection of the people. Any who harm you answer to me." He spoke with quiet authority, making it clear that his word on this matter was final. Many Horses stepped forward and spoke in heavily accented but clear English. "You are welcome, widow woman. Your child is welcome. You are safe here." Then he smiled, and the expression transformed his weathered face. "Come, you must be tired from journey. My wife will feed you, give you clean clothing, help you rest. Tomorrow is soon enough for questions and decisions. Today you are guest." And so Lillian Quinn, frontier widow, found herself welcomed into a Comanche camp, given shelter by the very people she'd been taught to fear. As the sun set over the river valley, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, she stood with her daughter and watched the life of the camp unfold around them. Children laughing, women singing as they worked, men sharing stories around fires. It was, she realized with something like shock, not so different from any frontier settlement. Different language, different customs, but the same fundamental things. Family, community, the struggle to survive and find moments of joy in a hard world. And in that realization, something shifted in her understanding of the world and her place in it. The morning sun filtered through the smoke hole at the top of the teepee, creating a column of dusty light that fell across Lily's face and woke her from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. For a moment, she lay disoriented, wondering where she was, why the ceiling above her was made of hide, stretched over wooden poles instead of timber planks. Then memory flooded back, and she sat up quickly, looking for Anna. Her daughter slept peacefully on a pile of soft buffalo robes, her small chest rising and falling with steady breaths, her hand still clutching the carved horse Blackwind had given her. The teepee Many Horses had provided was smaller than his own, but well appointed. buffalo robes for sleeping, woven willow backrests for sitting, parfleche containers decorated with geometric designs that held dried meat and other supplies. A small fire pit in the center, currently cold, with a smoke hole directly above it. The floor was covered with more hides, making it surprisingly comfortable. Everything had its place, everything served a function. There was an elegance to the simplicity that Lily found appealing. Outside, she could hear the camp coming to life. The low murmur of voices speaking Comanche, the sound of children playing, dogs barking, horses whinnying, the ordinary sounds of any community waking to a new day. She rose carefully, not wanting to disturb Anna, and stepped outside into the cool morning air. The sun was just clearing the eastern horizon, painting the river valley in shades of gold and amber. Cooking fires were being rekindled, sending thin streams of smoke into the clear sky. A woman approached carrying a bundle of clothing. She was perhaps 40 years old, her face kind and weathered, her dark hair shot through with streaks of grey. She smiled at Lily and spoke in Comanche, gesturing to the bundle. When Lily looked confused, the woman switched to broken English. "For you? Where? Your dress, not good for here." She held up the bundle, revealing a deerskin dress decorated with blue and white beadwork, along with soft moccasins and leggings. Lily hesitated, then accepted the clothing with a grateful nod. The woman, whose name Lily would learn was Grey Dove, gestured for her to follow. She led Lily to a secluded spot along the river where the women bathed, screened from view by willows and tall grass. The water was cold but clean, and after days of travel, the chance to wash away the dust and sweat was too tempting to refuse. Grey Dove waited patiently while Lily bathed, then showed her how to properly wear the Comanche clothing, adjusting the fit and demonstrating how to tie the leggings. The deerskin was butter-soft against Lily's skin, far more comfortable than her rough cotton dress had been. The moccasins fit perfectly, molding to her feet like a second skin. When she was dressed, Grey Dove nodded in approval and led her back to camp. Several women looked up from their work as they passed, their expressions ranging from curiosity to wariness. But Grey Dove spoke to them in rapid Comanche, her tone brooking no argument, and the wariness faded somewhat. Back at the teepee, Anna was awake and frightened, calling for her mother. Lily rushed inside and gathered her daughter close, soothing her fears. Grey Dove followed and presented similar clothing for Anna, a tiny deerskin dress and moccasins that made the little girl's eyes go wide with wonder. Anna had never worn anything so fine. Her whole life had been homespun cotton and hand-me-downs. These clothes were beautiful, decorated with care and skill. After Anna was dressed and they'd eaten a breakfast of cornmeal mush and berries that Grey Dove provided, the woman gestured for them to follow her. She led them through the camp, pointing out different lodges and explaining in her limited English who lived where. The teepee of Many Horses and his wife White Dawn, the lodge where the young warriors gathered, the women's working area where hides were scraped and tanned, the place where the children played under the watchful eyes of the grandmothers. Anna was entranced by the camp. Everything was new and exciting. She watched the children playing a game with sticks and a ball, her fingers twitching with the desire to join them. A young girl about Anna's age noticed her watching and ran over, speaking in Comanche. When Anna just stared, not understanding, the girl grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the game. Anna looked back at her mother, uncertain. Lily nodded, and Anna let herself be led away, her nervous expression gradually transforming into a shy smile. Grey Dove led Lily to where several women worked scraping a buffalo hide stretched on a wooden frame. It was hard work, Lily could see, requiring strength and skill to remove every bit of flesh and fat without damaging the hide itself. One of the women was White Dawn, Many Horses' wife, a woman of perhaps 60 years with gentle eyes and strong hands. She greeted Lily with a nod and gestured to an unfinished hide. Through Grey Dove's translation, she invited Lily to help. Lily had never worked a buffalo hide before, but she'd scraped deer hides with her mother as a girl. The principle was the same, though the scale was much larger. White Dawn showed her how to hold the scraping tool, a piece of sharpened bone lashed to a wooden handle, and demonstrated the proper angle and pressure. Lily's first attempts were clumsy, but White Dawn corrected her gently, guiding her hands, showing her again and again until the motion became more natural. The work was hard and monotonous, but there was something meditative about it. The rhythmic scraping, the gradual transformation of the raw hide, and as they worked, the women talked among themselves in Comanche, occasionally including Lily with gestures or simple English words. Grey Dove explained that they were discussing the upcoming move. The camp didn't stay in one place long. They followed the buffalo herds, the seasons, the availability of good grazing for the horses. In another moon, they would pack everything and move south to the winter grounds. As the morning progressed, Lily found herself falling into the rhythm of camp life. It was different from the frontier settlements she'd known, but not alien. Women worked together, sharing the labor and the conversation. Children played under watchful eyes. Men tended the horse herds and hunted to provide meat. Everyone contributed according to their abilities. Everyone was part of the whole. There was a sense of community here that Lily had rarely felt in the white settlements, where people were often isolated on their individual homesteads, struggling alone against the harshness of the land. At midday, the women stopped work to eat and rest in the shade of a large cottonwood. They shared food from their individual stores, creating a communal meal. Dried meat, fresh fish from the river, berries, roots, corn cakes cooked on hot stones. Anna appeared with her new friends, chattering excitedly about the games they'd played, her earlier fear completely forgotten in the joy of childhood friendship. She ate hungrily, then ran off again to continue playing. White Dawn spoke to Lily in careful English, her words slow and deliberate. "Your daughter, she is happy. This is good. Children should play, should laugh. Too much sadness in the world already. Let her be child while she can." There was wisdom in the old woman's eyes, and something else, sadness, perhaps, the knowledge of hard times coming, of a way of life ending. But she smiled at Lily, and the expression was warm and genuine. In the afternoon, Grey Dove took Lily to gather plants along the river. Several other women joined them, and they spread out along the bank, harvesting roots and herbs that would be used for food and medicine. Grey Dove showed Lily which plants were safe to eat, which had healing properties, which should be avoided. She demonstrated how to dig the roots without damaging the plant, how to harvest leaves without killing the whole growth, ensuring there would be more next season. It was knowledge passed down through generations, the accumulated wisdom of a people who'd lived in harmony with this land for centuries. One of the younger women, a girl of perhaps 16 named Little Fox, spoke some English and served as translator. Through her, Grey Dove explained the properties of each plant, this root for stomach ailments, these leaves for wounds, this bark for fever. The natural pharmacy was extensive and sophisticated. Lily found herself fascinated, remembering the helplessness she'd felt when Thomas lay dying, when all her prayers and limited remedies had done nothing to save him. Perhaps if she'd known then what these women were teaching her now. As they worked, Little Fox asked questions about Lily's life, where she came from, how she'd met Black Wind, what had happened to bring her to the camp. Lily told the story haltingly, still processing the trauma of those events at Fort Dawson. The women listened with expressions of sympathy and anger. When Lily described how Greer had tried to take Anna as payment for debt, White Dawn spat on the ground and spoke harsh words in Comanche. Little Fox translated, "She says the white man's laws are twisted, that they value paper and gold more than children, that this is why the whites are sick in their spirits." Lily couldn't argue with that assessment. She'd seen too much cruelty justified by law and contract to defend the system. Instead, she asked her own questions. She wanted to understand the Comanche way of life, the customs and beliefs that governed this community. Through Little Fox, the women explained. They spoke of the importance of generosity, of sharing wealth rather than hoarding it. They described their belief in the interconnectedness of all things, the idea that humans were just one part of a great web of life that included animals, plants, earth, sky, and spirit. They talked about the value placed on individual freedom, on the right of each person to make their own choices, as long as those choices didn't harm the community. It was a worldview profoundly different from the rigid hierarchies and property-focused culture Lily had grown up in. Here a person's worth wasn't measured by what they owned, but by their generosity, their courage, their wisdom, their contributions to the whole. Women had more autonomy and respect than Lily had ever seen in white society. They could own property, had voices in council, could divorce husbands who mistreated them. Children were treasured and raised communally, with everyone responsible for teaching and protecting them. As evening approached, they returned to camp with baskets full of gathered plants. Cooking fires were being lit, and the smell of roasting meat filled the air. Black Wind appeared as if summoned, walking through the camp with quiet purpose. He'd been absent all day, hunting with the other men, and now carried a young deer across his shoulders. He deposited it at the women's working area, where it would be butchered and the meat distributed among the families. Then he approached Lily. "You have settled in?" he asked, his dark eyes searching her face. Lily nodded, surprised to realize it was true. "The women have been kind. They're teaching me. Anna has made friends. We're doing well, better than I expected." Black Wind's expression softened slightly, something that might have been satisfaction crossing his features. "Good, you are adapting. This is important. The camp moves soon. You will need these skills." He glanced toward where Anna played with the other children, her laughter ringing out clear and bright. "Your daughter has no fear. This is good. Children know truth that adults forget. They see people, not enemies." He paused, then added, "Many horses speaks well of you. The women tell him you work hard, learn quickly, show respect. This matters. It builds trust." Lily studied his face, seeing the weariness there beneath the stoic exterior. "You didn't have to do this. Take us in. Convince your people to accept us. Why go to all this trouble for strangers?" Black Wind was quiet for a long moment, watching the children play. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. "I told you about my sister. What I did not tell you is that I have spent 10 years trying to undo that loss. I raid the settlements sometimes, yes. I fight the soldiers who invade our lands. But I also watch for people who need help, who are caught in circumstances not of their making. I cannot save my sister. She is lost to me, made into someone I do not know. But I can save others. Each one is a small payment against a debt I can never fully repay." He looked directly at Lily then, and she saw the depth of pain in his eyes, the weight of responsibility and loss he carried. "You asked me once why I chose to help you. The truth? Because I could. Because I happened to be at that fort on that day. Because I saw you fighting for your daughter with everything you had. And I remembered my mother fighting the same way when the soldiers came. Because sometimes the universe gives us a chance to make things right. Even if it's not our own wrong, we're correcting. And because I have learned that the greatest rebellion against a cruel world is to practice kindness when cruelty is expected." His words struck something deep in Lily's chest. She'd spent so long seeing the world in simple terms. White and Indian, civilized and savage, good and evil. But this man defied those categories. He was a warrior who'd killed soldiers, yes, but he was also a man capable of profound compassion, driven by a moral code as rigid as any she'd encountered. He was, she realized, one of the most honorable men she'd ever met, more honorable than the civilized businessman like Greer who used law as a weapon, more honorable than the soldiers who followed orders without questioning their morality. More honorable than the preachers who spoke of salvation while supporting systems of oppression. "Thank you," she said, and the words carried the weight of everything she felt but couldn't adequately express. Not just for saving us, for showing us there's another way to live, for giving Anna a chance to be a child again, for treating us with dignity when the world we came from had stripped us of it. Black Wind nodded, accepting her gratitude, then gestured toward the center of camp where people were gathering. Come, tonight there is dancing, stories, music. You should see this. You should understand what it is you have become part of, even if only for a time. As darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, the camp transformed. A large fire was built in the central area, flames leaping high into the night sky. People gathered around it in a loose circle. Men brought out drums, the deep rhythm pulsing like a heartbeat. Someone began to sing, a high, keening melody that sent shivers down Lily's spine. Then the dancing began, not the formal, structured dances of white society with their rigid rules and careful propriety. This was something primal and free, bodies moving with the rhythm, expressing joy and sorrow, triumph and loss, all the emotions of the human experience. Anna sat beside her mother, eyes wide with wonder, watching the dancers spin and leap in the firelight. Other children joined in, their movements less practiced but no less enthusiastic. The old people clapped and sang, keeping time with the drums. Young warriors showed off their skill and strength. Women danced with grace and power, celebrating their own vitality. It was beautiful and wild and utterly foreign to everything Lily had known. And yet it spoke to something deep in her soul that had long been suppressed by the demands of survival and propriety. Many horses rose and began to tell a story, his voice carrying across the gathering. Little Fox sat beside Lily and translated in whispers. It was a creation story, telling how the Comanche people came into the world, how they learned to hunt and survive, how they acquired horses and became the great riders of the plains. The story was alive with voices and gestures, acted out as much as told, and the audience responded with laughter and exclamations at the appropriate moments. When many horses finished, others took turns sharing stories. Tales of great hunts, accounts of battles and adventures. Funny stories that made everyone laugh. Sad stories that brought tears. The oral tradition of a people keeping their history alive. Black Wind did not dance or tell stories. He sat at the edge of the gathering, watching with the stillness that seemed so much a part of him. But Lily noticed how people's eyes turned to him often, how young warriors sought his approval with glances, how children felt safe enough to approach and lean against him. He was respected here, valued, seen as a protector and provider. Whatever reputation he had among the whites as a dangerous raider, here he was simply a good man, a valuable member of the community. As the night deepened and the gathering began to break up, families drifting back to their lodges, White Dawn approached Lily. Through Little Fox's translation, she invited Lily to join the Women's Council the next day. It was an honor, Little Fox explained, extended only to those who'd proven themselves worthy of inclusion. The council discussed matters affecting the camp, advised the headman, resolved disputes, planned for the future. For Lily to be invited after only 2 days was unusual, a sign that the women had accepted her as one of their own. Lily walked back to her teepee with Anna half asleep against her shoulder, her mind whirling with the events of the day. She'd woken that morning as a refugee, dependent on the charity of strangers. She was going to sleep as something more. Not quite a member of the tribe, not yet, but no longer an outsider either. She was becoming part of this community, finding a place in its rhythms and routines. And more surprising than anything else, she was happy. Despite everything she'd lost, despite the uncertainty of her future, despite living among people she'd been taught to fear, she felt more at peace than she had in months. As she settled Anna into the buffalo robes and lay down herself, Lily stared up through the smoke hole at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was the world she'd come from, Fort Dawson with its rigid laws and cruel men, the settlements where property mattered more than people, the civilization that had taken everything from her and offered nothing in return. That world seemed very far away now, almost unreal, like something from another life. Here, in this Comanche camp beside a river in the heart of the wild territory, she'd found something unexpected. Not just safety or shelter, but belonging, community, purpose, and perhaps, though it was too soon to name it clearly, the first stirrings of a feeling that might someday become home. The alarm came at dawn, shattering the peaceful morning with urgent shouts and the thunder of hooves. Lily jerked awake, her heart hammering as she heard men calling out in Comanche, their voices sharp with warning. Outside the teepee, the camp erupted into controlled chaos. Women grabbed children, pulling them close. Warriors ran for their weapons. Horses whinnied and stamped, sensing the tension that crackled through the air like electricity before a storm. Anna clutched her mother, eyes wide with fear. "Mama, what's happening?" Before Lily could answer, Grey Dove burst into the teepee, speaking rapidly in Comanche. Her expression was grim, frightened in a way Lily had never seen from the usually calm woman. She grabbed Lily's arm and pulled her toward the teepee entrance, gesturing urgently. Outside, Lily saw warriors mounted and ready, bows strung, rifles in hand. Black Wind was among them, his face once again painted with the crimson war paint, transforming him back into the fearsome blood rider. He sat tall on his paint horse, scanning the eastern horizon where dust rose in a thick cloud. Many horses stood beside him, speaking in low, urgent tones. Even from a distance, Lily could read the tension in their postures. Little Fox appeared at Lily's side, breathless and frightened. "Soldiers," she gasped in English, "coming from the fort, many of them, with wagons and guns. The scouts say they are looking for someone." Her eyes locked onto Lily's face, and understanding passed between them without words. They were looking for her, for Anna. Somehow Silas Greer had convinced the army to pursue them, to violate Comanche territory and retrieve what he considered his property. Lily's blood turned to ice. After everything, after finding safety and beginning to heal, the past had caught up with them. She watched as Black Wind dismounted and strode toward her, his expression unreadable beneath the war paint. When he reached her, his voice was low and controlled, but she could hear the anger simmering beneath. "The bluecoats come. 30 soldiers, maybe more. They fly a white flag, claim they want to talk, to negotiate. But they bring too many guns for talking. They want you and the child." "I won't let them take Anna," Lily said, her voice shaking but determined. "I'll go with them. I'll surrender myself. Just keep Anna safe, please. Hide her. Protect her. Don't let them find her." Black Wind's eyes flashed. "No, you think I saved you from one man's cruelty only to hand you to another? You are under my protection, both of you. That means something. It means I fight." Many horses approached, his weathered face grave. He spoke to Black Wind in Comanche, his tone urgent and persuasive. Black Wind responded sharply, shaking his head. An argument ensued, rapid-fire exchanges that Lily couldn't follow. Finally, many horses turned to Little Fox and spoke. The young woman translated for Lily. "Many horses says we cannot fight the army." "Not now. We are too few. Our warriors number only 15. The soldiers are twice that, maybe more. And if we fight, if we kill soldiers, the army will send more. They will hunt us until every man, woman, and child is dead or on a reservation. He says we must talk, must try to find a peaceful solution." Black Wind's jaw clenched, every muscle in his body taut with barely controlled fury. But he nodded once sharply. He understood the reality, even if he hated it. The Comanche were fighting a losing war against an enemy with endless resources and reinforcements. Every battle, even if won, brought them closer to extinction. He turned to Lily. "Stay here. Keep the child hidden. I will talk to them. I will try to send them away. But if talking fails, be ready to run. Grey Dove knows hidden paths through the canyon. She will take you." He mounted his horse and rode toward the approaching soldiers, with a small group of warriors flanking him. Lily watched them go, her stomach churning with fear and guilt. These people had taken her in, had shown her kindness, and now they faced danger because of her. She gathered Anna close, retreating into the teepee with Grey Dove, who began packing essential supplies into a leather bag with swift, practiced movements. The old woman's face was set in determined lines. She'd clearly done this before, prepared for flight in the face of overwhelming force. Through the teepee's opening, Lily watched as Black Wind and his warriors met the approaching soldiers at the edge of camp. The army column stopped, and an officer rode forward. Even from a distance, Lily recognized the rigid posture of military authority. The officer said something, his voice carrying across the camp, though Lily couldn't make out the words. Black Wind responded, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. The negotiation continued for long minutes. Lily's hands trembled as she held Anna, whispering reassurances she didn't feel. The little girl was silent, sensing the danger, her small body pressed tight against her mother. Around them, the camp held its collective breath. Women gathered their children. Old men checked weapons they hadn't needed to use in months. Everyone prepared for the possibility that peace would fail and violence would erupt. Then the officer's voice rose, angry and demanding. He gestured toward the camp, clearly making threats. Black Wind remained motionless on his horse, but Lily saw his hand drift toward the rifle secured to his saddle. The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and blood would flow. Lily made a decision. She couldn't let these people die for her. She couldn't let Anna grow up knowing that an entire community had been destroyed because of them. She stood, ignoring Grey Dove's protest, and walked out of the teepee. "Wait!" she shouted in English, her voice cutting through the tension. Every head turned toward her. Black Wind's eyes widened with alarm. The officer's gaze locked onto her with predatory satisfaction. Lily walked forward, her legs shaking but her resolve firm. Anna tried to follow, but Grey Dove held her back, the old woman's arms gentle but unyielding around the crying child. Lily reached the space between Black Wind and the soldiers. She looked up at the officer, recognizing him now as Captain Morrison, the man who'd commanded the detail at Fort Dawson. His expression was a mixture of relief and discomfort. "Mrs. Quinn," he said formally, "I'm here to escort you back to Fort Dawson. There are legal matters to resolve. Mr. Greer has filed complaints about the irregular nature of your release. The territorial governor has ordered an investigation." "Lies," Black Wind said, his voice flat and cold. "Greer got more than his debt was worth. The transaction was legal, witnessed by soldiers and civilians. He has no claim." Morrison's jaw tightened. "That's not for me to decide. I have orders to bring Mrs. Quinn back for questioning. And the child, they must return to answer to the law." "Your law," Black Wind replied. "Not our law. She is under the protection of the people. You have no authority here." Morrison's hand moved toward his sidearm, and instantly every Comanche warrior raised a weapon. The soldiers behind Morrison brought their rifles up. The morning air filled with the mechanical sounds of hammers being cocked, of arrows being nocked. Death hung in the balance, waiting for the slightest provocation. "Stop!" Lily's voice rang out, surprisingly strong. "Please, stop! I'll go. I'll go with you. Just leave these people alone. They've done nothing wrong. They gave me shelter when I had none. They've been kind to me and my daughter. Don't punish them for showing mercy." She turned to Black Wind, her eyes pleading. "Keep Anna safe. That's all I ask. Keep her safe until I can return." Black Wind's face was a mask of fury and anguish. "No, I did not buy your freedom only to watch you surrender it. I did not bring you here to watch you walk back into chains." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her. "You do not have to do this. We can fight. We can win." Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "And then what?" "They'll send more soldiers. They'll never stop. You said yourself your people are fighting a war they cannot win. I won't be the reason they lose another battle. I won't have their blood on my hands." She turned back to Morrison. "I'll come willingly, but I want your word as an officer that these people will not be harmed, that the army will leave this camp in peace, and I want Anna to stay here, protected, until the legal matters are resolved. She's not evidence. She's not property. She's a child, and she's safe here." Morrison looked uncomfortable, clearly not prepared for negotiation. "I can't leave the child. My orders are clear. Both of you are to return." Lily's eyes hardened. "Then you'll have to take me by force, Captain. And that means fighting every warrior here. Are you prepared to explain to your superiors why 30 soldiers died to enforce Silas Greer's greed?" Are you prepared to ignite a full-scale war over one frightened child? The standoff stretched on, silent and deadly. Then a voice called out from behind the soldiers, "Let the child stay." Everyone turned to see Sergeant Morrison, the same man who'd held Anna at Fort Dawson, riding forward. He'd clearly been part of the column, probably assigned because of his previous involvement. He addressed Captain Morrison directly. "So, with respect, the child is not named in the territorial order. Only Mrs. Quinn. We can fulfill our orders by bringing back the woman. The child's presence is not required." Captain Morrison's expression shifted through several emotions before settling into relief. He'd been given an out, a way to complete his mission without the bloodshed that had seemed inevitable. "Very well, Mrs. Quinn will return with us. The child may remain under Comanche protection until legal proceedings are complete. But mark my words, Comanche," he said, addressing Black Wind, "if any harm comes to that child, the full weight of the United States Army will fall upon you." Black Wind's eyes blazed with contempt. "The child is safer here than she ever was in your world of laws and contracts. No harm will come to her. This I swear." He dismounted and approached Lily, his movements controlled despite the rage she could see simmering beneath the surface. "This is wrong. You do not have to sacrifice yourself." Lily reached up and placed her hand on his painted face, a gesture of intimacy that shocked the watching soldiers. "You gave me and my daughter life when we had none. You showed us there's more to the world than cruelty and greed. Now it's my turn to protect what matters. Anna is safe with you. That's all that counts." She turned toward where Grey Dove still held Anna, the child now sobbing uncontrollably. Lily ran to her daughter, dropped to her knees, and pulled Anna into a fierce embrace. "Listen to me, baby. Listen to Mama. I have to go with the soldiers for a little while. But you're going to stay here with Grey Dove and Black Wind and all your new friends. They'll keep you safe. They'll take care of you. And I'll come back. I promise you, I'll come back." "No, Mama, no," Anna wailed, clinging desperately. "Don't leave me!" "Please don't leave me." Each word was a knife in Lily's heart, but she forced herself to be strong, to project confidence she didn't feel. "You're going to be brave for me. You're going to be the bravest girl in the whole world. And you're going to remember that Mama loves you more than anything, more than life itself. Nothing will keep me from coming back to you. Nothing." She kissed Anna's forehead, her cheeks, her hands, trying to memorize every detail of her daughter's face. Then she gently pried Anna's fingers loose and placed the child in Grey Dove's arms. The old woman held Anna tight, speaking soft words in Comanche, rocking her as Lily stood and walked toward the soldiers. Each step away from her daughter felt like walking through fire, but she kept moving. Black Wind caught her arm as she passed. "I will find a way to free you. I will not let them keep you. This I vow." His voice was low and intense, filled with a promise that sent shivers down her spine. Lily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then she was surrounded by soldiers, mounted on a spare horse, riding away from the camp as Anna's screams echoed behind her. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she would break. She would throw herself from the horse and run back to her daughter, and then the bloodshed would begin. So she stared straight ahead, her face wet with tears, her heart shattering with every hoofbeat that carried her father from the only place she'd felt safe in months. Behind her, Black Wind stood watching until the column disappeared over the horizon. Then he turned to Many Horses, and the old man recognized the expression on the warrior's face. It was the look of a man preparing for war. "She will not stay in their custody," Black Wind said, his voice quiet but absolutely certain. "I will get her back, even if I must tear down Fort Dawson stone by stone to do it." Many Horses placed a hand on Black Wind's shoulder. "Then you will need help, my son, and you will need a plan. Rage alone will not free her, but courage, cunning, and the strength of the people might." He raised his voice so all could hear. "Prepare. We ride when the time is right. The widow showed courage to protect us. Now we show courage to protect her." A chorus of agreement rose from the assembled warriors. They had taken Lily in as one of their own, and the Comanche did not abandon their own. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the camp transformed from a place of peace to a place preparing for battle. Black Wind began to plan, his mind working through strategies and possibilities. He had saved Lily once through gold and intimidation. This time would require something more. This time would require the full fury of the Blood Rider unleashed. Fort Dawson's stockade cells were nothing like the comfortable tipi Lily had grown accustomed to. The small room was built of rough timber, windowless except for a narrow gap near the ceiling that let in barely enough light to distinguish day from night. The air was stale and hot, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and despair. A wooden bucket in the corner served as her only facility. A thin blanket on the dirt floor was her bed. This was where they'd locked her 3 days ago, with only brief visits from guards bringing stale bread and water. She'd been interrogated twice by Captain Morrison and once by a territorial magistrate. The questions were always the same. Had she been coerced? Had the Comanche threatened her? Was the payment legitimate? Each time Lily gave the same answers. No coercion, no threats. The payment was freely given. The magistrate had been unmoved, citing precedent and law, speaking in the dry language of men who'd never known true desperation. Silas Greer had visited once, his face flushed with vindictive triumph. He'd stood outside the bars like a man viewing animals at a menagerie. You thought you could escape your obligations, Mrs. Quinn. The territorial court will void this transaction. Your daughter will be remanded to my custody for the full 7 years, plus additional time for the costs incurred in retrieving you. His smile had been cruel and cold. Lily had said nothing, refusing to give him satisfaction. The answer came on the 4th night, delivered not by lawyers, but by shadows and smoke. Lily woke to the smell of burning wood and the sound of shouting. Through the narrow gap, she saw an orange glow flickering against the night sky. Somewhere in the fort, something was on fire. The shouts grew louder, more panicked. Men running, orders being barked. Then she heard a different sound, closer, metal scraping against metal. The lock on her cell door rattled, and Lily scrambled to her feet. The door swung open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the firelight outside. Then he stepped into the cell, and she recognized him. Black Wind, his face painted with crimson war marks, his eyes burning with intensity. He said nothing. He simply held out his hand. Lily took it without hesitation, and he pulled her from the cell into the chaos beyond. The fort supply depot was engulfed in flames, soldiers running in every direction. In the confusion, no one noticed one painted warrior and a frontier widow slipping through the shadows. Black Wind moved with absolute certainty, keeping to the darkest corners, using the smoke as cover. They reached the fort's rear wall, where he'd secured a rope earlier. He helped Lily climb up and over, following right behind her. On the other side, horses waited, and mounted on one of them, held securely by Grey Dove, was Anna. The little girl's face lit up when she saw her mother. "Mama!" Lily ran to them, and Grey Dove lowered Anna into her arms. Lily held her daughter tight, hardly able to believe this was real. "No time!" Black Wind said urgently. "We must go now." He lifted both Lily and Anna onto one horse, then swung onto his own mount. They rode hard away from the fort, the sound of shouts and alarm bells fading behind them. The fire had been a diversion, Lily realized. Black Wind had created chaos to cover his rescue. They rode through the night without stopping, pushing the horses to their limits. By dawn, they'd put 20 miles between themselves and Fort Dawson, entering Broken Canyon country, where pursuit would be difficult. Finally, as the sun broke over the horizon, Black Wind called a halt in a hidden canyon where a spring fed a small pool. Anna had fallen asleep in her mother's arms during the ride. Lily laid her gently on the grass, then turned to Black Wind. "You came for me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You could have kept Anna safe and let me face the consequences. But you came." Black Wind was checking his horse, not looking up when he answered. "I told you. You are under my protection, both of you. I do not make empty promises. But now you'll be hunted," Lily said. "They'll send soldiers after you. You've made yourself an enemy of the United States Army for us. Now he did look up, his eyes intense. "I have been their enemy since the day they came to our lands. This changes nothing. One more offense makes no difference." Grey Dove spoke in Comanche, her tone urgent. Blackwind listened, then nodded. He turned to Lily. "We cannot return to the main camp. The soldiers will look there first. We must go deeper into Comancheria, to the hidden places. There are canyons in the north, sacred places, where my people have sheltered for generations. We will be safe there." "And then what?" Lily asked. "We can't hide forever." Blackwind's expression softened slightly. "The army's attention is short. They will chase us for a time, then other matters will demand their focus. Give them a few months, and we become yesterday's problem, forgotten in favor of today's concerns." He moved closer to Lily. "But you should understand what this means. If you come with us to the hidden canyons, you leave your old world behind. There will be no going back to white settlements. You will be Comanche for all practical purposes. Anna will grow up learning our ways, speaking our language. Is that what you want?" Lily looked down at her sleeping daughter, then back at Blackwind. "The world I came from took everything from me. My husband, my home, my dignity. It tried to take my daughter and turn her into property. That world has nothing for me anymore. But your world showed me kindness when I had none. Your people accepted us when we were strangers. So yes, I choose your world. I choose to stay with the people. I choose you." The last three words hung in the air between them. Blackwind's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment the stoic warrior seemed uncertain. Then slowly he reached up and wiped a smudge of dirt from her cheek, his touch gentle. "You honor me, and I will honor you. I will protect you and your daughter with my life. I will give you both a home, a family, a place to belong. This I swear," Grey Dove called out softly, pointing to the canyon rim. Blackwind followed her gaze and tensed. Riders, still distant but visible against the morning sky. The soldiers had found their trail. "We must go," he said. "The hidden canyons are still 2 days' ride." They mounted quickly and rode again, pushing north and west into increasingly rugged terrain. Blackwind's knowledge of the land gave them advantage. He led them through passages so narrow the horses barely fit, across stretches of rock that showed no tracks, into mazes where pursuit became guesswork. By the second day, they'd lost their pursuers. They were free. The hidden canyons were everything Blackwind had promised. A network of deep gorges with springs that never ran dry and grass that grew thick in protected valleys. Other Comanche lived here, families who'd refused the reservations, who clung to the old ways. They welcomed Blackwind as a brother and accepted Lily and Anna without question. Over the following weeks, Lily began to truly understand what it meant to be Comanche. She learned to tan hides properly, to recognize edible plants, to cook over an open fire. She learned phrases in the Comanche language. Anna thrived, learning faster than her mother, playing with Comanche children and absorbing the culture. The little girl who'd been terrified at Fort Dawson was becoming confident and strong, and through it all, Blackwind was there. Teaching, guiding, protecting. Lily found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way he moved with grace, the rare smile that transformed his features, the gentleness he showed with Anna, and she caught him watching her too, his dark eyes holding an expression she was beginning to recognize. One evening, as the sun set over the canyons in shades of gold and crimson, Blackwind approached where Lily sat working on a deerskin. Anna was playing nearby with other children, their laughter echoing off the canyon walls. He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Finally, he broke the silence. "You have adapted well, better than I expected. You have found a way to become part of the people." Lily smiled. "I had a good teacher, and a compelling reason to learn. This is my home now?" "Our home." Blackwind turned to face her fully. "I have been thinking. Among my people, when a man wishes to take a wife, he presents gifts to her family. But you have no family here to receive such gifts. So I must ask you directly." His expression was serious, but his eyes warm. "Lily Quinn, will you accept me as your husband? Will you let me be a father to Anna, a partner to you? I offer you my protection, my home, my heart." Lily's breath caught. She'd known her feelings were growing. had recognized the connection deepening between them, but she hadn't dared to hope it was mutual. "You would take on a white widow and her daughter? Bind yourself to us permanently?" He reached out and took her hand. "I already have, in every way that matters. I'm only asking to make it official. If you will have me—" "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you. Not because I need your protection, though I'm grateful for it, but because I love you. Because you showed me that honor and kindness exist in this world. Because you gave me back my life when I thought it was over." Blackwind smiled then, a genuine expression of joy. He leaned forward and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. When they parted, both were breathless. "I did not expect to find love again," he admitted quietly. "After losing my sister, I thought my heart was too damaged. But you and Anna, you healed something I thought was broken forever." They were married 3 days later in a Comanche ceremony. White Dawn and Grey Dove dressed her in a beautiful deerskin dress decorated with intricate beadwork. Many horses who'd traveled to the hidden canyons performed the blessing. Anna stood beside them, beaming with happiness, holding tight to the hand of her new father. That night, as Lily lay in Blackwind's arms in their shared teepee, listening to Anna's peaceful breathing nearby, she thought about the strange journey that had brought her here, from desperate widow begging for her child's life to wife of a Comanche warrior. From victim of cruel laws to member of a community that valued people over property. "What are you thinking?" Blackwind murmured. Lily smiled in the darkness. "I'm thinking that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things that save us. I was terrified of the Comanche, but you became my salvation, and I was thinking that love is strange. It doesn't always come in the packages we expect. Sometimes it comes painted in blood on the face of a warrior. Sometimes it comes from having everything taken away so we can discover what truly matters." Blackwind tightened his arms around her. "We have hard days ahead. The world is changing. But whatever comes, we face it together. You, me, Anna, and the people." Lily nodded against his chest. "Together," she agreed. And in that word was a promise, a commitment, a future. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. The canyon walls stood silent and strong, sheltering the people who'd made this harsh land their home. And in one teepee, a widow who'd begged for her child's life slept peacefully in the arms of the blood rider Comanche who'd answered that desperate prayer. Together, they'd built something from the ashes of loss. Together, they'd found hope in the most unexpected of places. Together, they were home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.